everyone, I'm Bam. Nice, thanks for joining me today. I'm Bam, and I'm a product designer at CrunchLabs. So I design the build boxes that get sent out to kids every month. And I'm super excited to be here to be talking about creativity. So let's get started. So let's start off with a little creative exercise. So I'd like you to spend 15 seconds to imagine a water bottle. So I'll give you some time. Cool. So we're going to save that image in your head for later. So since I was young, I've always found myself like awake in the middle of the night, staying awake from like very crazy ideas. And I really wondered why. And that kind of like kickstarted my journey into really understanding why I can be creative at certain times more than others. And today I'm going to be sharing my understanding of creativity with you and how I was able to unlock and utilize its magical powers and use it outside of that time. So to do that, we're going to be talking about three things. First, we're going to be talking about what is creativity. Then we're going to be talking about what affects your creativity. And last but not least, we're going to talk about how you can become more creative. So first of all, what is creativity? So a lot of the times, I'm going to start off by debunking one of the biggest misconceptions about creativity. For many people, when we think about creativity, we think about art. But art is not the same thing as creativity. Creativity is all about coming up with new ideas, whereas art is about expressing those ideas. So it helps to be able to do art, to be creative when you're trying to do art, and it helps to be artistic when you're being a creative, but they're not one of the same thing. So let's take a look at some examples. So you can be creative when you're making jokes, when you're cooking, when you're composing music, when you're inventing mechanisms, and also when you're coming up with business strategies. So creativity does not necessarily involve traditional artistic skills. So what this means is that anyone can benefit from being more creative. And the good news is anyone can become more creative because creativity is loading. Creativity is like a muscle. It's something that you can train and get better at through practice. So what is creativity anyways? Creativity is the ability to have original ideas. And to understand what that means, we're going to dive deeper into the science of how new ideas are formed. So new ideas are formed through what we call associative thinking. First, every person has every individual has a unique set of building blocks. So each block represents like a concept or a skill or an idea, and each color represents a group of these concepts. So for example, each stack of blocks could be different kinds of engineering, different techniques for art, different languages, or different disciplines altogether. And after searching and reorganizing, combining these building blocks, you might put some of these together, and what you get is a new idea. And this process happens across all different scales. So let's take a look at some examples. So it's loading. Nice. I'm not sure how to fix this. I'm just going to go without slides. So Da Vinci is like inarguably one of the most prolific and most creative individuals that many of us know, right? So why is this the case? Well, to start off, he has a very unique set of building blocks. He has his knowledge in astronomy, in science, engineering, mathematics, anatomy, cartography, architecture, all of that. So with his ability to seamlessly navigate this knowledge base, and with his building blocks, what we can get is, I really wish I had my slides. Did it show up? I'm not on the Wi-Fi. Can I get on the Wi-Fi? I think my phone's Wi-Fi kind of died. Sorry about that. That's the old other slide, though. I'm gonna present from my other browser since it has its loaded, but like, rather have that than not have it. Cool. Give me 1 second. All right. So it's like showing a different one. Cool. I know it's not full screen, but we will deal with that. All right. Sorry about the disruption. So we were talking about Da Vinci. And we were talking about why he can be so creative. And it's because he has all these building blocks in all different areas. So like engineering, mathematics, anatomy, flight of animals, cartography, and architecture. And with all these building blocks, when he puts these together, what he can get are some very sick inventions and some very sick art. So with this ability to seamlessly navigate his knowledge base and put these together, he's able to become very creative. So this process of associative thinking, of coming up with new ideas, is something that most people that we would describe as being very creative, such as Da Vinci, think about and practice very deliberately, right? So people like Da Vinci and even Mark Twain, who said, there is no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. We give them a turn, and they make new and curious combinations. So creativity is about your ability to come up with these combinations, given your building blocks. It's like saying, if I gave you a set of Legos, what can you build with it, right? So creativity is a skill, and creative thinking is a form of thinking, just like logical thinking or mathematical thinking. And it can be applied to many tasks, such as making you a better comedian or making you a better chef. So how can we foster your creative thinking skills? We're going to break down the process even further. So this is what the creative thinking process looks like. We start off with these building blocks. Then what we get is you give yourself a prompt. So let's say you're working on a project or you want to work on some art. This prompt constrains you and lets you work with a smaller number of these building blocks than from what you have, right? And then you try putting these building blocks together. You try putting them together in different ways. You might come up with like 5. And then you might like one in particular. So you might say like, oh, I want to like refine this and iterate this, and this becomes a new idea. Or you might realize that like, hey, I want to learn more about this other idea, but I don't really know much about it. So I would like to gain more expertise. So you might be looking for more building blocks to add to your repertoire. This whole process is the process of ideation. You're going in circles and you're almost like sampling these building blocks, trying different ways to put it together. And last but not least, you pick out your favorite one, and there goes your favorite idea. So the first half of the creative thinking process is focused on explorative thinking. It's focused on adding more blocks to what you have. And the second half is focused on associative thinking. It's about putting these blocks together. So if you want to be more creative, you're either improving your ability to do explorative thinking or improving your ability to do associative thinking. So it's like saying you can build more creative creations with Lego if you obtain more building blocks, right? Or if you work on your ability to put these blocks together in more unique ways. So next, we're going to talk about what affects your creativity. So across the board, whether it's in schools or in a professional setting, we found that the biggest barrier to creativity is the fear of failure. The most difficult step is the very first step of putting pen to paper, of overcoming the starting friction. So we're going to break this down and take a look at why this is the case and what this means. So a lot of us think of creativity as being an internal trait, something that belongs to just you. So, it's like, I am born to be creative, and you are not born to be creative. But that's actually not the case. Creativity is affected by both internal and external factors. So there's you, but there's also everything else around you, right? There's like your environment, there's the prompt, there's the people, the culture, and there are the tools. So these all affect your ability to think creatively. So we're going to go over these one by one. First of all, we're going to go back to our exercise in the beginning where I asked you to imagine a water bottle. Now instead, we're going to imagine a method to hold drinks. So I'm going to give you another 15 seconds. All right, so what did you notice? Well, for the people I asked to imagine a water bottle, what they imagined is pretty much a water bottle, right? But when I asked people to imagine a method to hold drinks, well, you get a bucket, you get a bowl, you get a swimming pool, you also get a beer can launcher. So you get all sorts of things. So what this demonstrates to us is the importance of the prompt and how it affects your ability to think creatively. It's the very first step to the creative thinking process, and it affects so much in the way that you approach whatever you're trying to do, right? So this is the importance of the prompt. And we're first going to talk about framing. So different framing triggers different associations. The way you put your problem together affects what solutions you come up with. And poor framing can generate bias. So in the particular case, if you're trying to problem solve, you want to make sure that you frame your problem in a solution-neutral way. So asking to brainstorm around methods to hold drinks as opposed to brainstorming around different kinds of water bottle. Next, we're going to talk about constraints. So if you're more constrained, you basically have less building blocks to work with, right? If you're less constrained, you have a lot of building blocks. But the sweet spot is it's all about finding the right balance between structure and agency. If there's too much structure, you don't have much to work with in the beginning. If there's too much agency, you might not know where to start. And so how do you find the right balance between these two? And it means constantly revisiting your prompt and seeing if the way that you're setting up your problem affects the way you're thinking and whether you want to constrain it further or relax it more. All right, next is we're going to talk about the people. So first of all, when you think about brainstorming or creativity, we think of a group setting sometimes, right? So why does collaboration work? Well, let's say I'm trying to solve a problem. What we do is maybe I gather a group of experts from different areas. They have building blocks, like this person with the orange might be like a superstar engineer, whereas the person in purple might be really good at marketing. So we gather these people together, and then when they collaborate, they put all their building blocks together, and then what we get is a big pool of building blocks that we can all share from. So that's why collaboration and diversity makes a difference in being creative, right? But however, this depends entirely on whether these people feel comfortable collaborating with each other, whether they feel comfortable sharing their ideas. Because if you put a group of experts in a room and none of them are willing to talk to each other, you're never going to be able to connect their blocks together, right? So this brings us to the concept of psychological safety. It's like asking yourself whether you would feel comfortable sharing the idea of a beer can cannon with the person next to you, right? Next are the tools. So the tools I've broken down to 4 different groups, so we're going to talk about all 4 of them. So first is tools for explorative thinking. So revisiting the creative thinking framework that we talked about earlier, explorative thinking is the first half of the process, right? It's about how do you obtain more of these building blocks. So these might include things like the internet, nature, libraries, workshops, museums, or AI. You could, let's say you're trying to make the next revolutionary drink holder. You might ask AI first for inspiration, like, hey, what are some ways I could hold a drink, right? You could go searching for that. But there are also other ways, such as the 6 thinking hats. So 6 thinking hats means you're pretending to be putting on different hats and looking at the problem from different perspectives. And this allows you to see the problem from different ways. And same as a role playing, where you're pretending to be another person, and you might be able to see the problem from a different perspective, right? So these are all ways in which you can gain more building blocks. And this also includes things like attending a convention. So it's all about how you find inspiration and obtain more building blocks, so that you have more things to work with when solving your problem. Next are tools for associative thinking. So these help you in the second stage of the process, helps you find different ways to connect these building blocks beyond what may seem obvious. So there are tools like asking yourself, what if, using a mind map, or using a how-why diagram, which is basically like asking yourself constantly why you're trying to do this thing, and then finding how to do those things. Or using this method called Scamper, which stands for subtracting, combining, adapting, modifying, put to another use, eliminate, or rearrange. So you're challenging yourself to view these building blocks from a different way to see whether there are new ways in which you could connect them. There's also a randomizer. So for example, let's say I'm trying to come up with a new way to hold drinks. Well, on one set of spinners, I might put, these are different ways to hold a drink. On the other side, I might put different ways to transport a drink. And then I spin them, and then the arrows point in different directions, and then I add them together, and then now that's how I might get a new idea. And last but not least is a timer. This is how you lower your expectations of what you might think of the ideas that you might want to produce. And then you're also forcing volume. So I might say, okay, bam, you need to come up with 10 ideas within the next minute. Next are tools for conceptualization. These tools help you make sense of higher volumes of information and their associations. So you can only hold so much of your concept of an idea in your head. So these tools help you understand that. So for example, you might use a sketchbook, right? Like I'm drawing like a cup holder, a leg strap where you put a cup on your leg, or a drone delivery system. And then you might use Post-its, where this allows you to group them and combine ideas in different ways and move it around with flexibility. Or you might use CAD. So maybe I was trying to design a Klein water bottle, but I was having trouble imagining how it would look like in my head, so I needed to put it on CAD. Last but not least are tools for communication. So we talked earlier about the importance of collaboration in creativity, and these tools help you communicate this information with others. So this might include things like sketches or prototypes or models, or presenting that information to others, or using a whiteboard. So last but not least, creativity is also about you. First of all, even before you set yourself up with a prompt, how are you setting yourself up for success? By having enough building blocks to work with from the beginning, right? This means that even before you have a problem to solve, if you're exposing yourself to these things, you have more things to work with. So you're exposing yourself to new knowledge, to new people, to new experiences, new cultures, new perspectives, new art, new resources, etc. And last but not least, it's the idea of conscious creativity. So we mentioned earlier about how there's 2 sides of the creative thinking process. There's the explorative thinking, and there's associative thinking. And these 2 different sides of the creative thinking process require different kind of tasks, right? 1 is about adding more blocks, and 2 is about combining the blocks. And you perform more effectively in these 2 stages with a different mental state. So when you're in the explorative when you're in the explorative thinking stage, you want to be more focused, right? Studies have shown that if you are more focused or more stressed, you're more likely to think in a depth-first way, whereas if you're more relaxed, you're more likely to think in the breadth-first way. So that's like when you're trying to like do associative thinking, that is why you come up with like shower thoughts, right? You're feeling relaxed, your brain might be like wandering and things like that. And so because of this also solves the mystery I mentioned earlier in my presentation about why I'm kept up in the middle of the night coming up with crazy ideas, is because my brain is more relaxed, and that's why I'm making associations that are not obvious, and I might not otherwise be doing that when I'm like fully awake. So creativity is not something that you can just like brute force and do it. You need to be very deliberate about how you perform it. So the question you want to ask yourself, to summarize, is are you setting yourself up with the mindset and environment that promote your creative thinking, right? Are you having a fear of failure? And if so, how can you overcome that? How do you find the right resources to promote the way you're thinking? So you may have heard the term put on your thinking cap, right? I think this is a perfect analogy for what we're doing with creativity. It's like when you walk into a shop and you put on your safety glasses and you look around to see if your environment is safe or not. It's the same thing about creativity. You put on your creative thinking cap and you see, okay, where I am, the creative process, do I have the tools? Do I have the people? Do I have what I need to be successful in thinking creatively? And by putting on your creative thinking cap and approach creative thinking very deliberately, you're able to practice and become more creative. So, but yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy to open the floor up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Bam. Any questions? Anyone raising the hand that I can't see? Wait for the microphone.
How long does it take you to design a CrunchLabs box, like a toy for a box?
It takes me about maybe like a month to come up with an idea, 3 days to build it, and then another month to iterate on it. Yeah. Ideation is one of the hardest parts.
More questions? Excellent.
Where do you get the ideas for CrunchLabs boxes?
That's interesting. So one of the toys I made, I got it from it was a digital game that I really liked playing when I was 10 years old. So I was like, cool, I'm going to make a physical version of this. For other ones, it's a lot from bouncing off ideas with other product designers. And we have a lot of very fun things in the office that we look at and we're like, oh, cool, that'd be fun. Or cool, that'd be fun. What if we mix them together? Or what if we did this or that? So a lot of that is just having more things to look at to get inspiration from.
What's your favorite idea that you came up with?
My favorite idea, that's a hard question. Maybe, I'm pretty proud of the framework that I came up with for this one. So, yeah. Cool.
How did you think about this job? Did you get a regular job interview? Like, how do you even think about getting into this kind of field?
So the question was how I decided to get into field? So I studied mechanical engineering, and then I taught math, and then I studied product design. And so this job is the intersection of all those three.
Hi, so when you're designing for kids, which would have different like fine motor and neurological differences from yourself. How do you design products with that in mind so that you don't release a box and kids just can't wrap their brains around it?
Yeah, so what's fun about product design is the more different your user is from you, the more you need to challenge your assumptions of what they know and what they believe, right? So if you're designing for kids, you might think you know what they want or what they can do, but it's not the case. So there's always a process of talking to them, observing them interact with things, understanding from parents what they like, but also testing. We do a lot of testing where we hand these toys to kids and see how they interact with them and observe them and see what is difficult, what is fun. It's a constant process of iteration.
Hi, thank you. Very nice presentation. Did you ever come up with a design that failed, and then what did you learn from it? And the next time, how do you overcome the fear of failure?
Can you repeat the second half of the question, sorry?
And then, going forward, how did you overcome the fear of failure?
Yeah. So the fear of failure, I think, for me, mostly would come from the people around me. Like, I can be very creative in one environment, but not at all in another environment. So if there's a group of people around you who are able to support you and are able to look at your failures and tell you what you can do better, as opposed to tell you that too bad, right? That's the most important thing. But failure is something that you should almost expect. When we're prototyping, we're always prototyping with a specific question in mind. Are you prototyping to understand de-risk the technology? Are you prototyping to communicate an idea, right? So if we have the specific questions we're trying to answer in mind, when it does fail, you know what you're trying to get out of it and how you can fix it and improve it for next time.
Got time for maybe one or two more questions. Oh, down front.
When you're designing a CrunchLabs box, what's your favorite part of the process?
My favorite part of the process is definitely ideation. It's coming up with the idea and creating a rough prototype of the idea in the very beginning. So it might take me 2 weeks to do some research, come up with an idea, and then I spend 1 day making a very rough prototype with a specific question in mind, which is this going to be fun? And then you can put that in front of a kid. It might not be the most refined prototype, but by doing that, you understand whether it's fun or not. And then after that, you spend many months making it more refined. But it's a very, very first step where you try to figure out what that fun aspect is like.
All right, one last quick question.
What's your favorite YouTube channel?
Ooh.
I have two. It's either the Mark Rober channel or the CrunchLabs channel.
Perfect. Let's give it up for Bam.
Thank you, guys.